All right, let me immediately just say this, that I think we are hitting what I said in the beginning, the heart of the matter, by saying there are absolute values that address all of us and that we all can come to know. What does Frankl mean when he says meaning is there for anybody to find, whoever they are, in whatever circumstances, and in whichever time they are there? So you see, if there are these universals, if there are these objective values, if they, then this is what we can confidently explore with our clients. Otherwise, we're at sea. What are we trying to do? If we believe that our client does have a will to meaning, that they are searching for meaning, that there are certain things that they do experience as meaningful and other things that they experience as frightening and meaningless, that they don't want what is meaningless, but that they want to have what feels meaningful and that makes them feel connected and their lives have purpose and they feel part of life. That is really that unconscious link to the divine, to the divine, a feeling that our lives are given to us with meaning, that we were created with a purpose. We're not just arbitrarily here by some kind of freak accident and it doesn't matter where we go afterwards. We have a role to play. Now, if that's your orientation, and that's the absolute of a logotherapy, which is different from other therapies. Other therapies are based on other paradigms, on a problem-solving paradigm, on and on a positive psychology kind of paradigm, just to make you happy or feel, like Frank said, it's not just about equilibrium, it's about finding meaning. So that is what makes the logotherapy principles absolutes. And if they're absolute, we can confidently feel that this is what our client really needs. And we don't preach, we don't tell them, but we are confident that they are searching for, and we can listen to their lives at the present moment in the meaning. They are having a meaning crisis. Any crisis is actually a meaning crisis. Mm-hmm. When we feel disconnected, when we feel not wanted, when we feel we're overlooked and not heard, and in other words, that our lives are not with purpose, and there isn't an invested task in it, that we don't have a responsible role to play, then pathology sets in. Then fears overwhelm us. Then anxieties get the better of us. Then doubts make us fall around like you can't believe. So, and when we, in other words, when clients present to us with confusion, with doubt, with pain, with problems, it's because they're in a meaning crisis. So, our orientation is what are they missing? What are they looking for? Where can they find it in their own lives? Where did they find it? What gives them a sense of direction? And zoom in on that, because those absolute and transcendent values that come to us as expectations of response in each and every situation, it is are operative in our clients' lives. Their lives are addressing them. The call that came to us, Teria, where are you? Is what comes to the client. Where are you? You're lost. Let's help you find your way. And you want to find your way. That's the wonderful thing. And you can find your way because you've got the ability. These are the absolutes of logotherapy. Okay, let's talk about this some more.
Well, you can't help but look at all the things that get in the way of that, if you want them to find their way, and peeling that away so that they're or taking what's in the background and putting, even if it's small, putting that in the foreground,
Yes.
because
Yes.
that's really what matters.
Yes. Very important. What is it that I have to let go of? What is it that I have to change? What is it that I shouldn't allow to enter my life in such a way that it victimizes me? You know, we have to, what is it to find meaning in life? It is eventually to say, what have I got to do with things that are wrong and unjust and hurtful and painful and cause us suffering and the humiliation of others? I will not do it. So that's the singularity that we want our clients to move in, this kind of freedom, that is the freedom of dignity, the freedom of knowing who you are and what you're meant to be. And you know, you won't have that sense of real direction and purpose in your life if you haven't found that way. So, you know, it's a path of spiritual growth. And it starts from birth, and it's supposed to achieve a purpose, which in the end of your life you can say, I have done what I was expected to do or to have been, right? So there is a path, and there is a path, in other words, of saying yes to life, yes to what is good, yes to what you feel you intuitively know is good, because you know what the hurtful consequences of bad is when you behave abominably or hurtfully or slanderously, as we saw, and you're not perfectly innocent. You haven't, you know, the purity of the human spirit, the unscathed human spirit, has to become evident. We have to learn what it is that makes us pure, that makes us a real human being. You know, the homo type that people can say, man, I want to speak to this person because they listen to me, they can see me, and they have found the path in life, and I want to follow, because that's the difference. That's the
Teria,
difference.
there's three people who
Okay, please, I'm going off, you know, as I usually do. Let's hear those three people.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi,
I'm sorry, my camera does not work. I don't know why. But otherwise, Teria, as you were introducing the topic, there are quite a number of things which came into my mind. The first one is actually two. The first one, I was thinking of paradox, especially when Mark talks about expert. So I struggle with that. But what came into my mind is that when we meet in any encounter, especially in a therapeutic or counseling encounter, I believe even in a student's teacher or student supervisor, is that paradox of being an expert and being humble. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
It has to be in those two modes. Being aware of your expertise and knowledge of your uniqueness as a human being, but also being also humble that one has got a limitation and one has to be open in the moment and to the person they have. And this brings me, and I usually give this example. This is a real example, very bad, but and always share it, is what happened to me when I started applying logotherapy in the clinic. I, one day, in a busy clinic, got a young girl, a teenager, who came in because she was epileptic and struggling to go to school because she was having anxiety every time she has a fit. And people would laugh at her for what would happen, because when she is unconscious, she would having urinary incontinence, very embarrassing position, situation. So she had that anxiety of going to school. So I in the moment, suggested a paradoxical attitude, using paradoxical intention, because she herself has said she loved making people laugh. She loved to make people be funny, just to make people happy. So I said, okay, fine, then you have an opportunity every day in the morning when you go. He said, okay, yeah, I'm going to have another fit and make people laugh at me and they would be happy. Yours is to make them happy while you are taking care of yourself. She laughed at it, got the courage of going to school, and she's like, no, I think I don't have to worry anymore going to school. So I was so excited. I had managed to apply a technique which I always find very difficult.
Yeah.
But unfortunately for me,
Mhm.
as soon as she left the consulting room, another girl comes in, same age, epileptic, with the same problem. And I'm like, I got it. I have to use the same technique. This should be easy. This should not be a problem. I suggested the same thing. I'm telling you, I've never caused such pain in my client. That girl felt so, she started crying. So she was like, how can you be the one who's laughing at me? How can you join those who are always laughing at me after having a fit? So for me, that the lesson was never, never, never treat people the same,
Yeah.
because they are always different.
Yes.
And even the same person seen in different session is a totally different person. So one has to be, I have to be very, very open to the moment and not preempt of a technique I'm going to use. Never.
Yeah.
I try my best to keep away from any technique. I'm aware that I've learned all these things. I'm aware that I know how to apply them, but I'm not intending to apply them on anyone. I'm intending to meet the person and to learn to listen and to respond.
Yes.
So that's
Um,
what I thought I
yeah,
should share. I don't know
exactly.
if it makes sense.
And you make a very, very important point, which is a moral, a logotherapy absolute, the uniqueness of meaning, right? That each moment is unique, as like each person is unique, and their moments are unique. So, you know, it's listening into the uniqueness of their moments. And then to exercise what would be logotherapy absolutes. In the case of the one client, it was the defiant power of the human spirit. That you could ask her to paradoxically and humorously deal because with her situation, because you had already picked up that she has that self-transcendent ability in terms of the humor. But with the epileptic client, my word, you know, if you had exercised the same technique, it would be disastrous, because she was asking for your empathy, for your understanding, and she was not at all in the stronger position of your first client. So there we are. There's another model, rather a logotherapy absolute, to tune in to the particular moment. What is this particular moment asking? And no moment asks the same thing every time. That's why Frankl said life is as a unique conversation with each one of us. You can't repeat the same conversation with somebody else. You have a different conversation. You are two different people, and a different kind of encounter with a different situation and with a different a command that comes from the divine in terms of, love your neighbor as yourself, or, inspire courage and be a role model. There are so many applications of these moral absolutes. All right.
Sarah had something to say. Sarah had something to say.
Yes, Sarah, please.
Yes, thank you. Just to add to that, something that I really, really love about logotherapy counseling is the attitude that we have. Like, we see, you mentioned it, Teria, like the unscathed human spirit. And I think that alone is so healing to so many people, because I've encountered so many approaches that focus on the psychopathological condition that might be right, might be wrong. Someone once diagnosed it. And there's so much meaning and hope for a better life, I think, lost in identifying with the condition. And so when we go in and we see that, and with empathy in our attitude and just the complete presence and curiosity that we give them to encounter them where they are, I think that alone is just so wonderful and so powerful.
Oh, absolutely. And there you spell out a most fundamental logotherapy absolute, where Frankl said to love someone is to see their uniqueness. Now, your whole orientation, love is a service. Love, love delights in the beloved. Love would never think to hurt the beloved. So, and the love sees the person, like as King Solomon said to a lady that said, I'm black and I'm uncomely. He said, you're altogether lovely, my love, because I see you behind your problems. And like you say, it's not to say that there might not be a diagnosis of some or other pathological problem, but for example, somebody can be suffering from, I had a client just this past week, true delusions. And he was schizophrenic, but he was still there. And the way, and seeing him helped him to deal with those delusions, helped him, to like Frankl says to a schizophrenic girl, we psychiatrists will deal with it, with the delusions. There might be medical intervention called for, but the client is seen behind whatever problem he presents, and that is the healing factor. Otherwise, it's a removal of symptoms. But you can have all the symptom removal, and if you haven't, like just treating a schizophrenic patient without this kind of empathy, they'll fall ill again, because at the basis of it, there is the fear, I don't know what's happening to me. And if I know that I've got a purpose, then I can deal with what's happening to me. All right, a very, very important absolute that you brought to the fore. Thank you. There was a third person.
Yeah, may I? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes. When I want to come back to what you talked about, slander and gossip and all that you would not cooperate with that in order to keep dignity of yourself and of the person who's talking to you or the client. And I was reminded, I think it would be interesting for us to know, because Frankl was influenced by the historical Socrates, and I was reminded of the 3 criteria that Socrates talks about before you engage in any conversation that has to do with something that might lower the dignity of someone. The first one, he asks, a person comes to him and he wants to tell him something. And he says, Socrates says, before you tell me, I want to ask you, are you sure what you're going to tell me is true? And the person says, well, I'm not so sure. I heard it from someone. And then Socrates says, is it a good thing? And he says, no, actually, it's a very bad thing. And then Socrates asks, and are you sure it is necessary that you tell me this? And that man says, well, I'm not at all sure that it is necessary. And then he shuts up. So,
Well, you know, I want to underline that too as a logotherapy absolute, which is that we put the focus on the positive, on meaning. Meaning is always positive. It's always life enriching. It's always life enlivening. It's inspirational. It draws you. It connects you. It makes you feel you're on your way. So it's very, very powerful. So and that is why we do not dwell on the problems and the pathology, and and because the bad reports, we go behind the bad reports to why the person believes those bad reports. For example, a person who has suffered abuse that really believe they are bad. Are you going to listen to all their declarations of how horrible they are and what terrible things happen to them? Or will you say, listen, why do you suffer so much under that? Is it something you wanted? Is it something good? No. Is it meaningful to you? No. So what is it that you really wanted? So let's see where you can find that. What in your life presents as an invitation, because logotherapy in that way is a very intensive challenge for the person to emerge out of lies, of misconceptions, of negative self-views, of a depressive view of life. All of that, those are the things we counteract. We don't. So that what you're saying, what as Socrates also, and that's why Frankl so loved to use what he called the Socratic dialogue, is to elicit from the client what they actually know they want and they need, and what is valuable and meaningful to them. And they react to those things and not to the lies that come to them and say, you're horrible, and and then fall into a state of depression or humiliation or go and hide themselves in a corner. You are actually actively calling the person to put their focus on meaning, which is on the positive and the things that are really, that ought to be. Okay.
Timur had something to say before.
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I wanted to add to our discussion on the proper attitude or stance of a psychotherapist or logotherapist rather. Yeah. And so I'm quoting this in my diploma thesis, which is in progress. And I think that a statement can be particularly powerful if it comes from an unexpected place. And Sigmund Freud, who in humanistic psychology is sometimes vilified, and because his approach is criticized as paternalistic, objectifying, and I think there are good arguments that it was, but in a letter to Carl Jung as early as 1911, he writes, I have come to believe that the most important factor in psychotherapy is the personal relationship between patient and physician. This does not depend on professional training or medical theories, but on human qualities, on the ability to love and to show compassion.
Wow.
And I think it's pretty unexpected that it comes from Sigmund Freud, because it sounds pretty much like from one of Viktor Frankl's works.
Mm-hmm. Didn't you say it was from Jung, Timur?
It was a letter from Freud to Jung.
Right. Well, you know what? Freud was the one to say that we are more moral than we believe. And his personal life was highly moral. Yeah. He was devotedly loyal to his wife. And, and his mother adored him, and he looked up to his father. That he exercised the moral values. What he exposed was the deviousness of actually a suppression of the real person through hurtful and damaging relationships that are oppressive and do not recognize the person. And these things can become deeply pathological. And this is what he brought to the surface. He said, I've disturbed the sleep of mankind because he said, I've shown what can happen in the basement when there is no moral light. Okay. So no, I am a great admirer of Freud.
And you are very smart.
That's why Frankl said he's standing on the shoulders of a giant, and he just sees a bit further. It was Freud's mission to uncover the hypocritical front of piety and judgmentalism in society that does so much harm, and that really vilifies and humiliates people or judges them for, and not being prim and proper and up to the standards of societal norms formulated by men at the time, So that was his mission. And but Frankl was just looking beyond that to what actually brings healing, and Freud agreed with him. So did Jung.
So did Jung, yeah.
So did Maslow. In the end, they all say, for heaven's sakes. So did Rogers. That to see the unconditional worth of the person and to relate to that, and not to put them under a critical scrutiny of judgmentalism, that is what we all need. So wonderful, wonderful. Yes. Oh, I'm looking forward to, Batya must tell me about your diplomate. It sounds very, very fascinating.
Thank you.
And maybe you can come and share it with us.
With pleasure.
Oh, that would be great. Yes. All right. Anybody else? This is such a fascinating conversation. And what I really through real life experiences that we can share, especially that our clients bring to us, or that we ourselves struggle with. Look how what we learned from what Kanda was saying. Again, to be exercised in not to be insensitive to the unique and peculiar needs of a next client, and never to become complacently arrogant. It's like he said, that combination of expertise. But, if you want to use your expertise to serve, and you're so grateful for your ability, your given ability, to have found meaning that you haven't conjured up, but that are there to be experienced. My word, what a wonderful thing. How can you be arrogant and bloated with self-importance? You are humble. Wow. And how you learn from your clients too, that contribute to your understanding. It's another feature we can explore, just how what our clients can teach us in terms of what they need, and in terms of what we have to foster in ourselves to meet those needs. All right. Okay, everybody, this was great, the absolutes of logotherapy, because they are absolutes. And this is what I just wanted to underline today. They are commandments. They are requirements. They are the kind of behavior that is expected of us. And we have to learn to discern between what ought to be and what ought not to be. And we have to learn to say yes to life and no to what damages and harms it. And even if we have to take a strong stand against a perpetrator, that we have to do it. And sometimes even in our therapy, we can be corrective in a challenging way. So listen, what do you think that's doing? like Elizabeth Lucas with a man that was really treating his wife so badly, and she was looking for a chink in the armor. What does he really care about? To call him to responsibility. So that's also a stand to say, no, that kind of behavior, let's look at it. It's destructive. What does it do? Does it make you feel good about yourself? What are the effects? Like, you know, one of our other counselors work with sexual abuse among religious people, and he doesn't allow them to get away with their religiosity, saying simply what you're doing is wrong. That's it. So, okay. Right, we'll continue this conversation. I'd really like you to make suggestions as to what we can do in future sessions to present your own story, or to bring the story of a client that you want to discuss, or any issue, okay? And let's get really convinced about what is absolute and an absolute truth, to be able to distinguish it from what is an absolute lie. Okay. Right. Okay. Listen, I've got something very unusual tonight. As you saw, the title of the presentation, and we hope to have a discussion on it, is the absolutes of logotherapy counseling. Now, I have to explain to you what I mean by absolutes, and I ask your patience as I just read how I have written it out in terms of having to understand the word absolute. All right, what do we mean by absolutes? Yes, it is the fundamental principles of logotherapy, but it's more than that. What can be stated as the objective truths that logotherapy expounds. And here we come to what Frankl described as the objectivity of meaning. And by that, he meant that that meaning is transcendent, beyond manipulation or change. This means, in effect, that these truths that we call meanings are transmitted to us from what Frankl in his dimensional ontology called the transcendent or suprahuman dimension of being. That is a dimension beyond the third or human dimension of being. And as human beings, we operate on the human dimension, right? We've got a physical dimension, and yes, we've got a psychological dimension, but in actual fact, as we shall see, we are called upon to use body and souls, our physicalities, the way that we can speak and hear and do, and all that we feel and are, to spiritual causes, okay? We have to master those, what Frankl says are otherwise subhuman dimensions of being. And it's very clear, of course, that we are human and not divine. But being self-transcendent creatures, we have the capacity to reach out beyond ourselves and experience the objective meanings that we can also call values. That is, values that are fundamental to our existence as human beings. And Frankl said, man lives in and through values. How are we to define those values if, as Frankl said, that these are values to live by, right? Then we come to a real here we come to a real designation of meanings as objective. They are, in fact, commandments transmitted to us through our conscience, the one right action or attitude in each and every situation that we are to exercise in our lives. Our conscience is, as Frankl defined it, a moral compass. And the ability to hear or perceive or intuitively sense what is the right response, the one right response to every situation, that comes to us as something that is expected of us. A right response is expected of us. And if it is expected of us, it means that we have the inherent ability to answer in the way that is expected of us. We have an inherent will to meaning, an unconscious but all the more conscious awareness of being addressed by the divine and become what we have been created and given the ability to be. What Frankl said, what man is, he is not yet, but ought to be and should become. So we can discern between what ought to be, what we intuitively discern is what we should be or should do in a situation, if we are truly to be true to ourselves as morally discerning creatures that are what? Called to responsibility. We are held accountable for our actions or the way that we behave ourselves or are in our attitude and orientation towards others, because we have an inherent and intuitive knowledge of what Frankl called the unconscious God that becomes all the more conscious in terms of what we are expected to do and what we are expected not to do. And this is where Frankl then comes to the prime feature of logotherapy, when he said responsibility is the essence of human existence. And when he said man is spirit, that means we are not bound to the dictates of physical drives or emotional needs. We are, in fact, commissioned to master our instincts and control our emotions and use body and soul to rise to spiritual heights of moral stature. My word, this is really a mouthful. I needed to spell it out that way because that's really essentially what it is. That is what Frankl meant, that we cannot conjure up meaning or create it and make it something arbitrary. Well, I think this is how it should be, and you think, no, that's how it should be. There are these values that address all of us. And in the same way, that provokes our conscience and our will to listen, I want to react in a way that makes sense, that has meaning, that has enduring value, that has impact. I don't want to just be on a sea of doubt and indecision and arbitrary opinions of this and that and the other person, or even the slave of religious dogmatic ideologies. I want to know who I am supposed to be. And like Frankl said, to become that, to become fully who I am able to be and actually meant to be. Each in our own wonderfully unique circumstances. That is why the meaning of the moment is never the same for us. From moment to moment, we are required to react and respond in different ways. There are different challenges, different responses that we are to give, but they all have a moral character. They do, in terms of, is this authentically what is expected of us, what we are meant to be, what we ought to be, or is it not? Now, you know, these moral yardsticks, it's so incredible. And that is why I want to bring it down to counseling, is experienced in one terrain in an absolute sense. And that area is in our relationships with each other. Because, you know, whatever we do, is it to the benefit of somebody? Is it to serve someone? Is it to assist someone? Is it to care for, to be responsive to lend an ear to be there for? All of those outreaches, like Frankel said, meaning is out there in the world. And you know, what is it when he says people to love and encounter and causes to serve? But what are those causes if they're true, meaningful causes? They are actually means of serving others. You can be involved in so many different services to your community. And even if you are an electrician, then you want to make life easier for other people and you want to do it as well as possible. You want to add to the quality of life. Otherwise, it's just a job or it's just a means to get money, and it is devoid of meaning. For example, today we had a handyman to come in and put lights underneath our counters that I can better see what I'm cooking at night. And the way he did it with such care that he phoned us more than once as to what kind of lighting we want and what there is and what he recommends. And then he brought it and he installed it so perfectly. And he got such a joy from our joy of the good job that he has done. So it doesn't matter what you do, is what is your orientation? Is this what I should be doing to the best of my abilities with all that I have in terms of giving, in terms of answering the call of reacting to each and every situation in a right way, not being, you know, and this is now something I want us to come down to and discuss and consider, because when it comes to a counseling situation, how are we in our attitude, in our approach, in just the way we are, and the kind of people we are, with a kind of openness towards our clients, and so receptive in only one way, to see how we can assist them to become more of themselves, that their own lives can take on meaning and direction, that they also feel called to personal responsibility. You know, there are things that I can do and that I alone can do, and if I don't do it, it won't be done. Because, you know, none of us are always in the exact same situation. It changes all the time. And so, you know, the people that I influence, that you influence, that you have contact with, the kind of outreaches that you have because of your particular feeling of this is what I can do, and it's uniquely me. You may be skilled in one direction more than the other. All of that is in terms of really living a life of purpose and direction. If it hasn't got the sense of mission, if you don't feel commissioned, because actually responsibility is a commission, it's an accountable way of living. So without that, well, what does it matter? Who cares about who I am? And, what am I don't think I've got anything of worth to give to the world. Or, maybe I don't matter so much. All of those things are the hurtful experiences of a lack of meaning, of a lack of feeling a worthy person called to a worthy life, a life of impact and significance. So I'm going to ask us to do a little and a very unusual exercise tonight that I hope is just a forerunner for what we will be doing more and more in these Zoom sessions. I said that we would like to discuss counseling sessions with clients, but as we've said over and over again, your counseling skills become more refined the more you are more fully yourself, the more you are away from doubts and worries and anxieties and conflicts and emotionalities, and you're just there. It doesn't mean we don't have conflicts, but we do come to a point where when we focused in on another person, that we have to put all of that aside in being ready to have a true encounter, which can never be a true encounter if you're self-absorbed, aloof or cut off, or full of anxiety. You're just not fully there. So since we spoke about moral absolutes and the absolutes of logotherapy, what it is that we ought to be and that we should become, I want to do the unusual thing of having us analyze a psalm in terms of absolute principles of logotherapy and of absolute truths. It's Psalm, those of you who afterwards can go and read it, it's Psalm 15. And it says, who, O Lord, may sojourn in your tent? Who are in the presence of the transcendent, way above self-concern, selfishness, self-absorption? Who may dwell in your holy mountain? Now, what is that? Here it's described, he who walks in perfect innocence, does what is right, and speaks the truth from his heart, who has no slander on his tongue, and who has done his friend no evil, nor cast disgrace upon his intimate, your close ones, that you have not hurt or harmed or humiliated or embarrassed them. In whose eyes, and this is particularly difficult, the despicable is repulsive, but those who fear God, you honor. One who does not retract, though he has sworn to his hurt. And this is the model absolutes of saying, that is wrong, that I will not do, that I will withstand when others do it to others. this is the only time we take a clear judgmental stand towards anybody, is when they inflict hurt upon others, because all of the previous verses describes, you know, who walks in perfect innocence. You haven't got any ugly thought, ugly motive, spiteful or vengeful orientation, and you do what is right. You say no to what is wrong, and that you speak the truth. You're not deceptive. You're not full of guile. You don't deceive. You don't talk from a distance of aloofness, and see your client as just a problem that you are to manipulate with techniques to get them to function. That, you know, this is really to diminish the humanity of another, and certainly never to slander, which is to bear false report, or to be gossiping, or to indulge in listening to what people are saying about others. You know, in such a situation, it often is called for that when that is done, that you confront that person and say, I want you to say what you're saying in the presence of the one that you're talking about. Or else you walk out and say, I will not be associated with talking these evil things about somebody else, and humiliating and actually damaging their image in the eyes of others. And certainly that if you do your friend no evil, you're always there for them. You're always receptive to their needs, and you certainly, and the biggest test is that you walk innocently in your home. That is, that you do not hurt your spouse or your children, but you're there for them in serving ways. Now, I want to open this as a discussion now, because, you know, it sounds theoretical, but let us consider, and I'm going to ask you to answer these questions, or this. I start off with this particular question. What do you think will make your client really trust you or respond to you positively? What in your attitude would allow the client to enter into a real relationship with you that we can call an encounter? So let's talk about what you perceive as the absolutes of logotherapy counseling, the do's and the don'ts of it. Okay, I'm going to open this to a discussion now. Who would like to start? And, you know, I just, by the way, I also thought it would be very valuable if, apart from sessions that we discuss together, that it might be even more of a learning experience, that some of us have the courage to tell our own personal stories and the struggles we have, and, you know, where we find it difficult to find meaning, and where we do find meaning, and what it means to us and what impact it has on us, because that helps us to that position where we are more fully available, more sensitive, more understanding, more able to grasp the problems and the hurts and the pains and struggles of our own clients, but in ways that we will be able to assist them as to where to look and how what to respond to that is right there in their lives and are being offered to them as challenges. So let's start. If you were a client, okay, put it that way, what would you like your logotherapist to be like? Especially with the first meeting, okay? How would you start a session?
Could I say something?
Please.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Mark.
I'd like to talk a little bit about status. You know, when clients in any walk of life consult an expert in any walk of life, the perception is always that the person being consulted is the one with the highest status because they have the knowledge and are going to provide the service that you are paying for. And I think that very often, certainly the relationships that I had with, or the relationships, encounters I had with psychologists and things throughout my life, is that I always felt intimidated by those counselors, therapists, because they presented themselves, perhaps not intentionally, but as being on a different status to me, of being, I'm the one who has the knowledge to fix you. And I think in logotherapy, what is absolutely vital is for us to encounter our clients as equals, and for our clients to recognize in us a human being who is subject to the same fears, anxieties. Yes, we have the knowledge, we have the training, we hopefully have the ability to assist them, to help them find meaning, but we are not there to solve their problems for them. And if they feel that we are approaching them from a perspective of pure empathy, because we are like them, just a human being, subject to the same challenges, fears, hopes, dreams, desires, etc., then I believe that we can have a true encounter when we meet each other on level playing fields, as it were.
I would like to just highlight this one feature that is very important in what you've been mentioning, Mark. What makes us different from our clients? Why are we in the seat of the logotherapist? Because it's not like we are equal in the sense of both sharing our problems and our difficulties, and, you know, kind of lamenting together, crying on each other's shoulder. It's not that. And it's also not what you said, a question of status, that the logotherapist presents as somebody who has the answers to the client's life. We are, and I think the main feature that you lifted out was empathy. If you have not gone through suffering and you have not struggled with meaning in your life, how can you have any understanding of what anybody else is going through? But the difference is this, and this is what Frankl said, that we have to discuss something that is beyond both of us, but which is meaning. But you, as a logotherapist, have been deeply schooled by the experiences in your life, not just academic knowledge, by the contemplating the principles of logotherapy as values, as absolute necessities in each and everyone's life. And they've become real to you. And you have now come to a position where this sense of personal responsibility has become like a mission, just like you're doing. You feel you want to give what you've learned and what you know, and what has had transformational effects in your own life. You want to help those who are struggling. and in many cases, struggling in the areas where you struggled, but where you have gained victory. And that's the difference. It's not, so there is a certain, and I want comments on this, a difference between you and your client, which makes it more than just a friendship or a sharing of common problems. There is a professionalism about it that indeed a client would come to a logotherapist. They wouldn't want to come to somebody that's in an absolute state of emotional turmoil and say, oh, I know what you feel like, because you know what, it's happening to me and I don't know what to do. That, you see, you say, yes, I understand. I've been there too. And I can feel what you feel like. But this, let's look at how your life addresses you in the way that it addressed me, and what had transformational effects on my life is an absolute value that we all need. And it's a truth that we all need to discover. So let's see how we can discover your truth in your circumstances together. So anybody would add to what we have discussed up to now?
Teria, two things. Firstly, there's 6 minutes left, I'm sorry. But I find what you've just said very, very interesting, because I've always felt the need to be quite circumspect about saying that I in any way really truly understand what someone else is going through. But the way you framed it, ending with, let's see how your situation is unique, basically, and solving it that way does give a feeling of compassion, understanding, but not taking away from someone else's situation by saying, yeah, I know how you feel. I've experienced the same thing. So I did find that very interesting, the way you framed it. Thank you.
I wondered, Coral, when you said there's 6 minutes left over, whether we can't just click into a new and just extend our time a bit tonight.
We'd all have to go off, and I'd have to readmit you all.